cost you a dime to be nice to people. It don't cost you a dime.
This guy is one of the best. No, he ain't one of them. Stop it.
And just like that, the intensity spiked through the roof when LeBron fired back immediately. This was not some polite little exchange of opinions. That moment flipped the script on the entire drama in a heartbeat. In the aftermath, it sent shockwaves rattling through the whole NBA landscape. We are talking about something way more massive than a single comment or a viral video clip. This was the big diesel versus the entire new school. But to really grasp the gravity of what went down regarding Bronny, you have to peel back the layers and understand the context first. Shaquille O'Neal has had smoke for practically every young player in the association lately. It is not just one guy or one-off night. He is coming for the whole tidal wave of them. Shaq has been calling out this generation for years now. He claims they have zero reverence for the icons or the grind that built this league. And this is not a one-and-done comment. He has been banging this drum on his show, on TNT, on podcasts, and all over social media from 2021 right through 2026. It is a consistent pattern with a simple, cutting argument. He is convinced that because today's players secure bags way bigger than the legends ever did, those massive contracts trick them into thinking they are automatically superior to the past era. He believes when icons like him or Sir Charles offer wisdom, the young stars do not soak it up. They clap back. In his view, the modern NBA has gone soft. You see fewer hard fouls, endless load management, and constant whining about the season's length. Through his lens, that competitive edge has completely evaporated. He laid it out plain and simple. These guys are making significantly more cash than we did. So, in their heads, they think they are better players. That one sentence unlocks the entire mystery of Shaq's perspective. To him, the astronomical money and the entitled attitude are joined at the hip. He is not saying these cats lack talent. He is saying they lack humility. From Shaq's vantage point, when a legend gives you the blueprint, you listen. You should be taking notes. You do not run to your phone to call that legend a hater. But according to him, that is the cycle that keeps repeating. And Shaq has zero issue dropping actual government names either. That is where the volume gets turned up. He does not distinguish one player from the broader trend. To the big man, it is all one continuous conversation. One minute he is dissecting Dwight Howard's contract situation. The next breath, he is arguing that Joel Embiid plays with a marshmallow softness compared to the Greek freak, Giannis Antetokounmpo.
The difference between Giannis and Embiid is force. Giannis is playing with force and Embiid is playing SOF capital.
Then he pulls the camera back to declare that the entire league has misplaced its toughness and grit. He said it straight to the camera on national TV. And when his co-host tried to check him for being too harsh, he stood his ground completely. That moment spoke volumes. The crew around him understood that his words cut deep. But Shaq, he did not view it as mean-spirited in the slightest. In his headspace, he is simply holding today's stars to the same suffocating pressure he felt when he was a rookie. No shortcuts. No excuse. Go earn it.
You go 1 out of 10.
I'm just saying that's harsh.
When you go 1 for 10, it ain't your coach's fault. It ain't your teammate's fault. It's your fault.
He identifies what he perceives as weakness. Then he calls it out in the most blunt, direct manner possible. When the player fires back or the fans get rowdy, he just doubles down. He has stated multiple times he knows what greatness looks like because he went to war with Jordan, Barkley, Malone, and Stockton. He has mentioned that he rarely hears modern hoopers admit they were terrified of facing LeBron. At least not in the way opponents once dreaded matching up with Jordan or Kobe, and that eats away at him. To Shaq, that signals a void. The fear factor, the deep respect, that mystical aura he believes, those elements are fading from the game. Way back in February of 2020, he encapsulated it in one post. He wrote, "Because you all accept mediocrity and us legends don't. This is why the game suffers." That message went nuclear online because it was not a sniper shot at one person. It was a cluster bomb aimed at everyone. The players, the fans, the media, the whole basketball culture. In Shaq's eyes, the standards have plummeted across the board. Guys sit out games when they are perfectly healthy. The league hands out flagrant fouls and suspensions for physical contact that used to be standard operating procedure. And the young players reaping the rewards of these new rules sometimes act like the legends are just bitter old heads. Shaq addressed that narrative head on without flinching. He said, "Stop being so sensitive, because I know exactly what I am talking about. And deep down, you know I am right." That is confidence at maximum volume. Now, here's where it gets real. Shaq has admitted that a piece of this feeling is jealousy not of the talent, but of the money. He has openly stated that watching guys secure $200 million contracts while averaging a measly 11 points a game rubs him the wrong way. He broke the math down on Inside the NBA with zero filter. Shaq looks at today's paychecks, rewinds to his prime earnings, and compares the production. When the numbers do not justify the salary in his eyes, that gap becomes the fuel for his hottest takes. That is the spark igniting the fire. However, Shaq insists his criticism is not about tearing anyone down. He claims it is strictly motivation. When he witnesses underperformance at the elite level, he issues the challenge not to destroy confidence, but to wake them up. And to be fair, he has shown plenty of love too. He has heaped massive praise on Anthony Edwards. He has consistently stood up for specific rookies when he believed the press was crossing the line. Basically, this is not arbitrary hostility. It is just how O'Neal operates sky-high expectations, a massive persona, and absolutely zero sugarcoating. Once you grasp that concept, it becomes crystal clear why the entire saga involving LeBron and his son spiraled into a phenomenon much larger than a single soundbite. To the Big Diesel, the boundary is straightforward grit, relentless hustle, and honoring history. If you violate those principles, he is going to expose you instantly without a second thought. You have to remain sturdy and display that hunger. Demonstrate genuine reverence for the icons of the game, and he will champion your cause vocally and unapologetically. That distinction is crucial because the glare of the public eye abruptly pivoted to a neophyte who had not even established his credentials, yet a teenager whose primary offense was bearing the heaviest surname in hoops history. Here's exactly where the Bronny narrative detonated. In June 2024, the Los Angeles Lakers took Bronny James with the 55th overall selection, deep in the weeds of the second round. Typically, the 55th choice gets a fleeting reference during the broadcast, a polite greeting from the commissioner, a snapshot wearing the hat, and an immediate fade into the obscurity of Summer League or the G League grind. There are usually zero massive expectations and no blinding strobe lights. The vast majority of guys drafted at 55 are just scraping and clawing to secure a temporary spot on the bench. However, Bronny James is far from your standard late draft acquisition. He happens to be the offspring of LeBron James. That solitary fact transformed what ought to have been a silent, stress-free introduction into arguably the most dissected selection of the entire calendar year. Every athletic program ran segments on it. Every pundit offered a hot take. And the internet absolutely lost its mind before he had even laced up his sneakers on professional hardwood. Even O'Neal acknowledged the bizarre nature of the frenzy, noting that in all his decades associated with the association, he had never witnessed a 55th pick generate that level of commotion. He was not taking a jab at Bronny with that remark. Shaq was simply verbalizing the undeniable reality of the situation. The hysteria had nothing to do with where he was selected and everything to do with the nomenclature stitched across his back, causing the intensity to ratchet up instantaneously. Throughout the Summer League circuit, Bronny faced significant headwinds. His jumper was not falling, and he appeared to be a rookie, acclimatizing to the increased velocity, muscular defense, and cerebral opposition. While that learning curve is standard for a debutant, particularly a late second-rounder, his lineage meant that every bricked shot transformed into breaking news, and every modest box score trended globally. Out of nowhere, everybody and their cousin developed a theory on his validity in the NBA, prompting O'Neal to hop on his podcast and forcefully counteract the narrative.
I would like the scrutiny to get off Bronny James.
That's who you would like to get a break from the scrutiny.
Yeah, my nephew.
He labeled Bronny his nephew, not via biological relation, but through that fraternity of hoops royalty, and that terminology is significant because it signaled his protective instincts were active.
I tell my kids all the time, pressure is where you don't know where your next meal is coming from. You don't have to be like me.
His offspring were raised beneath the crushing weight of anticipation, with the public assuming they would evolve into the next iteration of the big Aristotle. Observers constantly measured their skills against his dominant peak, and the moment they failed to mirror that supremacy, the detractors were ready to pounce. O'Neal has been candid about instructing his children that genuine adversity has nothing to do with fulfilling a basketball heritage.
I tell my kids all the time, pressure is where you don't know where your next meal is coming from. You don't have to be like me. I want you to be better than me. And I'm not talking about as a player, as a person.
He wished for the young man to possess the space to evolve, the latitude to make mistakes, and the freedom to learn without every single motion being analyzed like a national emergency.
Hope he has the opportunity to play well. Hope he has the opportunity to make a name for himself. But I'm sitting watching all the stuff and, like Bill Simmons saying, let's draft him and use him as like all that's unnecessary.
He sensed that certain media platforms were exploiting a teenager as mere content fodder rather than respecting a young athlete attempting to establish his equilibrium. Each blown layup was transformed into a punchline, Every roster adjustment sparked a debate regarding privilege, and the term nepotism began circulating as if it were the sole rationale for his presence. This is the point where things become intriguing, because Shaq, who never hesitates to label veterans as fragile or overhyped, drew a rigid line in the sand regarding this topic. Attacking a novice who has not even received a legitimate opportunity is a different animal, in his psyche, that is not comparable to roasting a max contract all-star. That is just a kid attempting to construct his own journey. And while toughness and accountability remain paramount for O'Neal, equity is equally important. Regarding the Bronny subject, he clarified his stance that the clamor was escalating too rapidly, becoming excessive, and reaching a deafening volume. Following the difficulties in the Summer League, TMZ managed to intercept Shaq and asked him directly for his thoughts on Bronny. O'Neal kept his response concise and supportive, maintained that intensity. "Bronny, Uncle Shaq has got love for you," and that was the end of it. There was no profound technical analysis, no itemized list of corrections, and no strings attached, merely genuine encouragement from a man who comprehends the burden. He has witnessed his own offspring navigate crushing expectations, so he intimately understands just how overwhelming that background noise can become. Shaq showing love didn't exactly put out the fire. If anything, the media circus just ramped up the volume, and with the regular season knocking on the door, everyone knew we were staring down the barrel of history. Fast forward to October 22nd, 2024, and you see LeBron and Bronny hitting the hardwood side by side to kick off the Lakers campaign. We are talking about the very first father-son duo to clock in for the same NBA game, and you can slice it however you want. But that is a monumental page in the record books. Bronny didn't see much floor time, and the shots he took didn't fall, which was all it took for the internet to instantly fracture into two warring camps. One side was popping champagne for the family legacy, while the other side glared at the box score and claimed he was out of his league, with absolutely zero gray area in between. Shaq took to the desk on Inside the NBA to weigh in, labeling the whole scene as a genuinely special occasion for the James clan. While he tipped his hat to the historical weight of it, he kept it 100% real regarding the actual hoops aspect, noting that Bronny wasn't exactly poised to crack the starting five or even headline the second string. The Big Diesel made it clear that the young man has a serious daily grind ahead of him just to claw his way into the regular rotation. That is just the cold, hard truth for the vast majority of rookies. And Shaq highlighted that barely any first-year talents storm onto the scene and dominate immediately. People tend to get amnesia about that fact when the hype train leaves the station. But Charles Barkley, he certainly didn't pull any punches. Chuck laid it out flat: the kid isn't ready and belongs in the G League, serving it up without a single grain of sugar. While Shaq refused to dogpile and kept his vibe strictly uplifting, he mentioned he has watched Bronny grow up for years, vouched for his work ethic, and made sure to send nothing but good vibes his way. Yet, even as he stood in Bronny's corner personally, Shaq couldn't completely separate this specific situation from his grander thesis regarding the state of the modern league. Chew on this for a second. The guy who claims this era is okay with being average was witnessing the most hyped rookie in the game flail around on a national broadcast. Suddenly, every clanked jumper wasn't just a miss. The public turned it into a massive symbol, maybe not inside Shaq's head, but out in the chaotic arena of sports debate. Bronny's rookie struggles began to morph into a metaphor for the entire league. Without asking for it, Bronny found himself drafted as the poster child for a heavy conversation he never agreed to join. Deep down in Shaq's commentary lies a fascinating paradox. On one hand, he shielded Bronny the person, even affectionately referring to him as nephew. He basically told the press to take a chill pill while offering steady support both in front of the cameras and behind closed doors. Flip the coin, though, and you have the same Shaq who has spent years preaching that today's players are soft, entitled cupcakes who crumble under critique, and in his world, both of these truths can ride shotgun together. He sees no issue with shielding a specific rookie from a torching while simultaneously holding the rest of the generation's feet to the fire. However, for the average fan tuning in live, that distinction looks thinner than a razor's edge. When you preach for years that modern hoopers are allergic to tough love, settle for average, and get defensive rather than better, the audience is going to connect the dots the moment a high-pressure rookie stumbles on the world stage. Now, Shaq never explicitly tagged Bronny as soft or accused him of spitting on the legends, but the air surrounding the topic was already thick with tension. The big Aristotle loves measuring the modern game against the golden days of Jordan and the Mamba. He preaches about instilling fear, owning the paint, and pure physicality, reminiscing on his podcast about how hard fouls were just part of the menu. Whereas now, a flagrant gets you fined and suspended. He laments that nobody fouls with bad intentions anymore and draws a straight line between load management and a culture of pampering and entitlement. With all that context, visualize Bronny sitting there at the far end of the pine, scraps of playing time, crushing pressure, and barely any chances to shine, all while trying to grow under the microscope of the entire basketball universe. Meanwhile, Shaq's manifesto claims these kids are too cozy and coddled. Consequently, when the bleachers look down at Bronny, that background noise of criticism starts playing in their heads. They witness a kid picked up by his dad's squad scraping for minutes, and they subconsciously tie him to that grander critique. Even if Shaq never explicitly made the connection himself, we aren't in uncharted territory here. Just rewind the tape to the Rudy Gobert saga on Inside the NBA. Shaq flat out refused to put Gobert's name in the elite conversation, completely ignoring his shelf full of Defensive Player of the Year trophies. Nah, he isn't in that club. Cut it out. Seriously, stop it. The rest of the crew fired back, accusing him of pure hating, telling him he was salty despite the man's accolades, but Shaq stood there like a brick wall. His rubric for greatness is frozen in a specific timeline, demanding a brutal physical style and paint dominance. If you don't fit that mold, Shaq is going to side-eye the hype. That filter is permanently attached to his view. So when Bronny has a rough night, the conversation instantly spirals beyond just a rookie clanking jumpers. It transforms into a referendum on standards, legacies, and whether the new school can hold a candle to the old school. That is exactly where the friction comes from, because that is the very era Shaq claims to be the avatar of. Therefore, when a defensive specialist like Gobert, who isn't exactly lighting up the scoreboard for 30 a night, inks a $200 million deal, Shaq views it as evidence that the bar has been lowered. And when he blasts that opinion across national TV, believe me, he is talking about way more than just the Frenchman. He is drawing a line in the sand that every single up-and-comer is going to be measured against.
All the kids out there watch Gobert. If you can do what he can do, you can get $200 million.
That jab might be targeted at what he considers a bloated financial market, but you have to consider the ripple effect of that message. It signals to every young hooper, Bronny included, that a fat paycheck does not automatically translate to legendary status. It insinuates that massive paydays don't necessarily equate to game-changing influence on the court. The underlying message is that the reverence these guys command might be a bit premature, frankly unmerited. Digging a little deeper, it propels the narrative that the modern game runs on a softer set of rules compared to the grit of the previous generation. The Big Diesel himself jumped into the fray regarding the Michael Jordan statistics controversy, specifically after a number cruncher alleged that his airness had his stats padded by generous home court scorekeepers back in the 1980s. O'Neal didn't hesitate or mince words in his rebuttal. He wasn't interested in dissecting the spreadsheets or analyzing the methodology.
Did you see them watch the game?
Like, did I watch them watch the game?
Yes.
I'm going to take their nerd findings for truth.
His stance was straightforward. The history books are closed. Those stats are inked in the official ledger, and nobody has the right to rewind the clock and tinker with them now.
Give extra love at home? They do. But it doesn't matter. It's there. It's documented. You want to impress me, go back and change it.
In the world, according to Shaq, the past is immutable, the record books are holy scripture, and the icons of the game are untouchable gods. Challenging that bedrock isn't seen as a revisionist history lesson. It is viewed as straight-up blasphemy. To him, the current of critique only flows downstream from the Hall of Famers to the young bucks. It never defies gravity to go up, and it certainly doesn't flow in reverse. This is precisely where the friction starts to heat up. You have Shaq, who is desperate to insulate Bronny from unwarranted backlash, referring to the kid as his own flesh and blood. He's pleading with the press to pump the brakes. Yet, simultaneously, he demands the license to lecture every other prospect in Bronny's class, claiming they lack the grit, the hunger, and the deference owed to the architects of the association. In O'Neal's mind, there is no contradiction there, but to the watching world, those threads are tangled together. Now, let's pivot the spotlight over to King James. LeBron has donned a closet full of hats, undisputed best on the planet. 4-time ring bearer, international symbol, mogul of industry, and media tycoon. However, regarding his eldest son, he has drawn a definitive line in the sand. Above all else, he is a dad, and a father's primal instinct is to shield his offspring. That defensive perimeter was established well before draft night. Back in March of 2023, James fired off a tweet claiming Bronny was already outplaying some of the guys he was seeing on League Pass. That wasn't LeBron, the scout dissecting film. That was pure, unfiltered proud papa energy, broadcasting it loud for the world to hear. Fast forward to February 2024. When Bronny took a tumble in the ESPN mock rankings, LeBron fired off and subsequently scrubbed posts, urging everyone to let the boy live and just play college ball. Hitting that delete button said more than the text ever could. He knows the game. Engaging with the noise just turns up the volume, but the paternal impulse to guard his son overpowered the calculated strategy that typically governs his moves. Following the draft selection and the subsequent heat from the Summer League, James sat for an interview with ESPN and stood 10 toes down on his stance. He insisted that the public has no clue who Bronny actually is, claiming the kid pays zero attention to the detractors. He stated plainly that Bronny doesn't give a rip, describing him as the chillest guy in the room, a stark contrast to his father's intensity. This was a deliberate attempt by James to rewrite the script. He even took to Instagram with a direct message to his son, advising him to tune out the vitriol because, quote, "They don't know you. That isn't a marketing play. That is parenting unfolding live." Once the regular season tipped off and the microscope zoomed in, LeBron's vibe changed. He transitioned from digital posts to physical presence. He went on record stating that if anyone actually spent 5 minutes with Bronny, they'd realize just how off base it is to judge him. He opened up about the heavy burden of carrying that last name, the deafening roar of social media, and the relentless comparison game. He noted that this was a layer of adversity he never had to navigate during his own ascent. Then, the situation reached a boiling point. In January 2025, Stephen A. Smith took to the airwaves on First Take, claiming he was making a plea to James, father to father. His argument was that the kid was being maneuvered into a spot where he was destined to catch heat for simply not being NBA ready. He didn't dance around it. He stated flatly that everyone is aware Bronny is only in the league due to his pop's influence. It was the most explicit, high-profile accusation of nepotism to date. Words like that don't just evaporate into the ether. They hang in the air. On March 6, 2025, during a showdown between the Lakers and the Knicks, James walked right up to Stephen A. Smith on the sideline. The lenses captured the whole interaction, and the news cycled instantly. You didn't need audio to read the body language. This had escalated beyond talking head banter. This was deeply personal. What began as hot takes had morphed into a tangible, face-to-face confrontation, and once you cross that threshold, the entire dynamic shifts. The footage appeared to show LeBron using some colorful vocabulary to tell him to keep his son's name out of his mouth. That instant wasn't about minutes played or field goal percentages. It wasn't a debate about whether Bronny earned his rotation spot. It was a father checking a media giant, man to man, with the world watching, establishing one non-negotiable rule: the kid is off limits. Smith later verified on First Take that James had indeed pressed him specifically regarding the remarks about Bronny, emphasizing that he was addressed by a father, not a basketball deity. That distinction is crucial. LeBron wasn't throwing his weight around as a Mount Rushmore legend. He wasn't flashing his rings or his resume. He was coming from a primal place that any parent can relate to. Enough is enough. Around that same window, Bronny tackled the noise head on. In a March 2025 sit-down with The Athletic, he mentioned he hears the vitriol but attempts to let it pass right through him. Though he confessed it, occasionally adds fuel to his fire. He also dropped a line about people viewing him as some sort of robot. That statement really lands. The masses see the stoic expression, the lack of theatrics, and assume he's numb to it all. But Bronny clarified that he absorbs every bit of it. He simply refuses to let it dictate his life. Possessing that level of composure at his age is incredibly rare. He discussed maintaining his poker face after draining his first bucket in Cleveland, the very building where his dad constructed a massive chunk of his legacy. Yeah, I mean, it was insane. Much more than I anticipated. For sure, but it is all love. It was just insane. He kept a straight face, but you could tell he was feeling every bit of it underneath. It was a beautiful moment, and getting that chance really hit home for me. I looked stone cold on the outside, but inside, man, I felt it, and it felt incredible. That right there pretty much sums up Bronny's whole vibe in a single sentence. Watching from the sidelines on that very same hardwood, LeBron spoke straight from a father's heart. My gut tells me he handled that situation way better than I ever could have back in the day. Just imagine 20,000 fans screaming your name at the top of their lungs, demanding you check into the game. He actually admitted he isn't sure if he could have shouldered that kind of massive weight at that age, which is something you really need to let sink in. We are talking about LeBron James, the guy who has been carrying the weight of the world since he was a teen on magazine covers, saying his 20-year-old son might actually have a stronger mental game than he did. They wanted me on the floor, and if the shoe was on the other foot, I honestly don't know if I could have kept it together. That isn't just hype. That is real recognition of his strength. LeBron gets it. Bronny isn't just out there shooting hoops. He is performing under a microscopic spotlight that basically never switches off. Now, let's take a step back and look at the macro view here, because this isn't really about Shaq going after Bronny. It isn't even fully a Shaq versus LeBron thing, either. It is about a much deeper philosophical divide that cuts right through the heart of professional sports today. It is a massive fault line separating the generation that poured the concrete for the stage and the new generation that just walked up and inherited it. Shaq's era defines greatness by the struggle playing through pain, taking brutal fouls without blinking, and competing back when contracts were smaller and endorsement deals were rare. In their heads, that daily grind is exactly what forged them. The lighter paychecks, the physical beatdowns, the nonstop warfare that was the ultimate proving ground. So when they look at the modern league with all this load management, huge bags of cash for role players, and guys clapping back at critics on Twitter instead of on the scoreboard, it feels like something sacred is being watered down, not just a personal slight, but a historical mark of disrespect to the game itself. Shaq has been shouting this from the rooftops on the TNT broadcast, on his podcast, and all over his social media feeds. He keeps hammering the same point over and over. The modern NBA is soft, lacks physicality, and has lost touch with the gritty hustle that shaped the legends. He has called out the massive contracts. He has challenged the new rule changes. He has questioned the effort levels and set his own generation as the gold standard. And then the whole debate around Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark added a fresh layer of complexity. On a recent episode of his show, Shaq broke down the pressure rookies face and drew a direct line to what Bronny is dealing with right now. This is just what you call the rites of passage. And every single player has to walk through that fire. First, they hype you up. Then they tear you apart. He framed that criticism as a necessary test, a filter designed to separate the ones who truly belong from the ones who don't cut it. He also dropped a major truth bomb, admitting that professional jealousy definitely plays a part in the mix. Vets will sometimes haze the rookies because they see all that attention and money rolling in way too fast, often before the kid has even built a real resume. I am using the term lightly here, but it really is professional jealousy, which is something we can all understand. That tension is 100% real, and Shaq has actually acknowledged feeling bits and pieces of that himself. He openly admitted that a part of him felt a twinge of envy watching LeBron and Bronny make history as the first father-son duo to share an NBA floor. It wasn't jealousy over skills or championship rings. It was envy over that specific milestone, an experience he knows he will never get to have. That kind of moment is way bigger than box scores or max contracts. It is legacy taking on a completely different form. A father sharing the hardwood with his own son, that is something no MVP trophy on earth can ever replace. When you stack all of this up, the criticism, the protective instincts, the pride, the jealousy, and the generational clash, you start to see the full picture come into focus. This isn't just about a few missed jump shots or heated debates on cable TV. It is about identity, history, and who actually gets to define greatness in a league that evolves every single year. But Shaq made it crystal clear that he draws a line in the sand. Some scrutiny is part of the game, but some of it crosses the line. He pointed to Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark as rookies who are earning their stripes through that veteran pushback. He framed it as a crucial part of the journey. You get tested, you clap back, and you prove you belong. He applied that exact logic to Bronny, but with one major caveat. He wanted the heat turned way down for his nephew, noting that is exactly what Angel and Caitlin are enduring right now. A lot of these sensitive folks just don't get that being accepted into a fraternity or sorority requires a mindset that isn't just random hazing. Shaq genuinely believes that breaking into the NBA, the WNBA, or any elite league comes with a mandatory trial period. You take your bumps, you face the challenges, and you deal with the doubters. You either rise to the occasion, or you fade into the background. In his view, the legends are the gatekeepers holding the measuring stick. But LeBron sees it from a totally different angle. LeBron doesn't view the media bashing his son as some sort of noble rite of passage. He sees it as piled-on pressure aimed at a young kid who is already living under the brightest spotlight in sports. Just showing up at 20 years old with cameras tracking your every move, that is the test. He doesn't think his son needs any extra noise or drama heaped on top of that reality. When they asked LeBron what it meant to watch his boy live out his dream, his answer didn't have a thing to do with stat lines or championship rings. It is hands down the greatest feeling in the world. You know, kids always have these wild dreams, starting when they are super young. He opened up about the parenting playbook he and Savannah live by, pushing their kids to hunt down their passions while promising to be right there in the trenches with them. That is the definition of family over everything. Since the very beginning, he has made it crystal clear, and his younger brother echoed the exact same sentiment that basketball is not just a hobby. It is the love of their lives and their chosen path. Let the old school icons argue back and forth about grit. Let them wax poetic about the bruising physicality and how rough the league used to be back in the day. That kind of chatter is just baked into the DNA of sports culture. However, the second that heat gets redirected at a rookie who is just hustling to crack the rotation, LeBron's position becomes incredibly straightforward. Showing a little bit of basic human decency is completely free of charge. Throughout the college years and spanning 2 full seasons in the big leagues, the King has kept the same energy. You will not find a single instance where he left Bronny out to dry. Every single word he has uttered into a microphone has been calculated to either lift the kid up or shield him from the noise. And whenever a boundary gets stepped over, doesn't matter if it is a random Twitter troll, a podcast host, or a heavyweight analyst, LeBron fires back, not as a global icon, but as a protective dad. Bronny himself has admitted that he was being groomed for this high-voltage lifestyle way before he could even wrap his head around what it meant. He mentioned, we have not really dove too deep into those heavy topics just yet, mostly because we have not even tipped off for the summer league at this point. But, it is just the same wisdom he has been pouring into me for my entire existence. It is about maintaining that relentless work ethic, staying coachable, keeping your ears open, and remaining laser-focused. Those are the core principles LeBron hammered into his DNA. He did not teach him how to win Twitter beefs or clap back at the haters. He taught him to keep his head down and let the work do the talking. Now, here is where the narrative takes a fascinating turn. Shaq claims that this new wave of hoopers has zero respect for the struggle of the previous eras. However, Bronny's entire career arc has been defined by pushing through a level of scrutiny that no other 55th overall pick in history has ever had to endure. He maintains his cool in situations that would rattle veterans, never once gripping to the press about the crushing weight of the expectations on his shoulders. That right there is the definition of putting in the work. By the time his sophomore campaign rolled around in the 2025 to 2026 season, the narrative finally began to pivot. The headlines became less jagged. The central question evolved from, does this kid belong here, to, look at how much he has developed. The chatter did not disappear completely, but the volume definitely turned down. The discourse transformed into an analysis of his tangible growth rather than a constant interrogation of his legitimacy. And after months of guarding his son with the ferocity of a lion, LeBron finally earned the right to kick back and just enjoy the show. And to give credit where it is due, Shaq never turned his back on Bronny personally. He never lumped him in with that soft label he throws at the rest of the generation. He managed to separate his protective feelings for the kid from his critiques of the modern game. But there is a crucial lesson buried in here. When you start a massive bonfire ranting about softness and entitlement, the heat inevitably spreads, singeing people you never intended to burn. Every single time the Big Diesel torched the modern league for embracing mediocrity, it thickened the atmosphere Bronny had to navigate, even if it was accidental. That narrative piled on the pressure. The reaction from LeBron was never complex calculus. It was never a calculated PR move. It certainly was not about generating headlines. It was purely about ensuring his boy never felt isolated in the middle of a hurricane. If that required checking someone right there on the sideline, then that is what had to happen. If it meant scrubbing tweets or setting the record straight in a post-game interview, he was going to do it. A father protects his own. End of story. But when the dust settles, this entire saga compels us to ask a much larger question. Who was the one who actually stepped out of bounds? Was the rookie out of line for cracking jokes about the icons, or was the Hall of Famer wrong for intervening on such a public stage? Or is this simply the friction caused when two distinct eras crash into each other in a league that refuses to stand still? Now, I want to turn this over to you guys. Hit up the comments section below and let me know exactly where you land on this entire controversy. If you vibed with this breakdown, do me a solid, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this with a friend who lives for NBA debates. I will catch you all on the next one.